Hi, and welcome to the first edition of Penguin Shootout on Herald-Standard.com. This will be a bi-weekly show covering your Pittsburgh Penguins in the NHL. I'm your host, Rob Burchianti. With me is Herald-Standard.com sports writer Derek Day. And we're going to start off picking up where the Penguins are right now. As of this moment on November 7th, when we're taping this, the Penguins have 21 points and lead the entire NHL. They've played more games, obviously, too. But they're 9-3-3. They're off to a great start. They're 2.80 goals per game. They're 10th in the league. 2.13 goals against, 5th in the league. Their power play, which struggled mightily last year, is 21.3%, 7th in the league. Penalty kill has been tremendous this year, 93.2%, 2nd in the league. So the team is off to a tremendous start and picked up right where they left off last year when they were playing real well, despite a bunch of injuries. And this year's team, although they're playing a lot like they did at the end of last year, it is a little bit different, Derek. So why don't you talk about this year's team as opposed to last year's team? What are the main changes in this year's team?
There are quite a few subtractions with minimal additions, so to speak. Start with the players that they lost through free agency. Mike Comrie, who didn't really play much last year anyway with his leg injuries and such, he is still unsigned still a free agent. And also Chris Connor, he was picked up by Detroit in the offseason. Enforcer Eric Goddard was signed by Dallas. Alexei Kovalev wasn't quite what he once was in the Penguins' first go-around. So the Penguins let him go, and he's actually playing in Russia right now for the Alant Moscow Oblast team. I think I got the pronunciation right.
I'm sure he's playing better for them than he did with the Penguins at the end of last year.
Mike Rupp, he was signed by division rival New York Rangers, and also another defector within the Atlantic Division, Max Talbot, who left. The Penguins just pretty much told him, "You're not really in our future plans." So he was kind of welcome to go wherever he signed, and he picked Philadelphia. He thought they had the best chance to.
That's the one that really hurts. Watching him go over to, after scoring those key goals in Game 7 against Detroit, watching Max Talbot go over to their rival Penguins, that's tough to take, to watch him in that uniform. Well, the Penguins, one of the keys to their big start so far has been James Neal. He leads the team with 9 goals. Jordan Staal has 6 goals. Chris Kunitz has 4 goals. But one of the keys so far, James Neal, unbelievable so far this year. After struggling last year and after opening this year without Crosby and Malkin, Evgeny Malkin's been off and on with injury. Did you expect James Neal to have this kind of impact already?
Not really. I mean, I kind of expected him to pick up the scoring once the Penguins completely got healthy. But of course, with Crosby being out and Malkin still dealing with some knee injuries, hopefully he has those behind him right now. But James Neal just scored first goal in the first game against Vancouver. They're banking the shot from below the goal line off of Roberto Luongo, and quite frankly has surprised a lot of people, thinking, where was this during the playoffs and in March last year? But I think a lot of it has to do with pressure, with moving to a new town, new city, and expected to score right off the bat. I mean,
he's a lot more comfortable now. Yeah,
he was in a no-win situation coming in here last year, and hopefully he'll only improve his production that much more once Crosby gets back to 100%.
Yeah, last year he had 1 goal after he was traded to the Penguins in the regular season and 1 playoff goal, and then that was it. Neal, it has to. It's a must. He does play well because the Penguins have had so many injuries. Why don't you talk about some of the injuries they've had? Obviously, one key one is Crosby. What about the other ones?
Well, they still haven't gotten back to 100% before the season even started. They started the season without Brooks Orpik, who had off-season abdominal surgery. He's just now getting back into the mix. Hopefully he'll round into mid-season form shortly. Like I said, as before, Evgeny Malkin was coming off his knee surgery back in February when he had blown out his knee, and we were all told he was going to be coming back better than ever, and only to have some soreness set in early on in the season where he missed a few games here and there. And he just recently put together 3 consecutive games played. And of course, Dustin Jeffrey blew out his knee as well, and he's just now getting back in the lineup too. But and it doesn't stop there, because now they're having more injuries on top of that, mostly on the back end with the defense core. Ben Lovejoy's just out 6 weeks with an injury. Brian Strader, they called up from AHL, to fill in some gaps. He's out another 2 weeks with wrist injury. And McCulloch has a broken finger. He's out for another month or 6 weeks. Tyler Kennedy, of course, had a concussion earlier in the year. He's still day-to-day, but he did return to practice earlier this month. And Matt Niskanen is still listed day-to-day. He took kind of a nasty fall the other night in a game, so he's kind of hit and miss as far as when he'll return as well. But it just never ends for the Penguins, it seems, on the injury front.
You think their coach is, so far this year, just picked up right where he left off last year, too. He was the coach of the year last year. How do you think he's done so far this year with all his injuries?
Oh, deservedly so. As you said, he won the Adams Award, and he's nothing. He is just the drink, the stirrer of the drink, so to speak, of the Penguins. The Penguins' cocktail of offense, defense, and goaltending. Of course, a lot of help from assistants. But yeah, Bosma does a great job in knowing what buttons to push to get the most out of his players.
Let's talk about Crosby now. Obviously, he had the concussion last year in the Winter Classic, and after that against Tampa Bay, 2 concussions in a row. He's been out ever since. What's his state right now?
Well, the latest is he has not ruled himself out as far as returning to play this Friday, Veterans Day, at home against Dallas. Now, that's significant in that before they went on this recent West Coast road trip to San Jose and Los Angeles, he said he would not play. Just the sheer fact that he hasn't ruled himself out as of yet is a good sign, whereas most of the media and everything have been speculating he would return against Dallas because they finally get a break in all these games. Like I said before, they played the most games in the league so far, and it was just a torrid pace before. And as you may or may not know, I mean, they play when they're going game days. They just usually have morning skates and light practices, no heavy hitting or anything like that going into a game. Whereas when you get these long layoffs, they have to keep their skills honed to a fine edge and all, of course. So they finally get to hit people and kind of simulate game action as best they can in a controlled environment. And finally, Crosby is able to get some hits. And
a good one from England, right?
Yeah, that's what we've heard through various sources and all and such. But hopefully he'll be able to take a few more of those hits and get cleared for game action. That's the final step, and hopefully we'll see him rising to the top of the scoring leaders once again.
Well, in his absence, like I said, the Penguins have played tremendous. Neal has 9 goals. Look at some of the Penguins' stats here. Jordan Stahl was caught fire lately. He's got 6 goals. Chris Kunitz has 4 goals. Those are the Penguins' goal leaders right now. Evgeny Malkin has 4 goals, and he's been brilliant when he's played. He's been showing that when he's healthy, he's one of the best players in the league, just like Crosby.
Yeah, he's the kind of the almost maybe more so skilled in the fact of being able to just take over a game. I mean, I cite as example the game against Carolina in the playoffs a few years back, where he just exploded for the hat trick and just pretty much took over the game, almost in Mario-esque form. Whereas, Crosby, as good as he is, he seems to just he's a well-rounded player, of course, but Malkin just seems to...
Malkin's more spectacular.
Yeah, he has a bigger flair.
I still remember the spinning goal in that game that he scored on was just one of the greatest goals I've seen. Looking at the assist leaders for the Penguins, too, Chris Letang has 12. And let's talk about Chris Letang right now, because he was really on fire early on. He just keeps getting better and better.
And quite frankly, he's almost the only healthy body back there right now, with McCulloch out and Orpik still rounding into mid-season form, of course. And he's just been he's the offensive point man on the power play, which helps him back there with newcomer Steve Sullivan, who's, although a forward, he's done very well in the power play.
The other thing about Letang, he's tremendous in the shootouts.
Yeah, he is. Most of the time you see forwards in the shootouts, and a few offensively gifted defensemen, such as Letang, will make their way into the shootouts, and that's always, every point counts, and you need to have a skill set to be able to go into the shootout and win those games to get those extra points. As we've seen before, a few years back, it came down to a shootout between New York Rangers and Philadelphia Flyers. Whoever won the shootout was going to be in the playoffs. So you need to have offensive skills, defensive skills, power play, penalty kill, and also be able to have the moves to shake the goalie out of his pad, so to speak, in the shootout as well.
Chris Letang could do that. Just following up on the assists, Pasquale Dupuis has 7 and Malkin has 6, even a limited time. Those are the Penguins' top 3 in assists. The Penguins' biggest rival, we were talking about Max Talbot going over to the Flyers. There's been talk about realigning the divisions. What do you know about that? And I heard that possibly it would include the Penguins and Flyers in separate divisions.
Well, this all comes out of the fact that over the past season, since last year, a group called True North Enterprises, to something to that effect, has bought the Atlanta Thrashers, and they were based out of Winnipeg, and they moved them to Winnipeg, as Winnipeg did not have a team since early in the mid-'90s, when their team, the Winnipeg Jets, moved to Phoenix and became the Coyotes. Well, now the Winnipeg Jets are back, but it's just the old Atlanta Thrashers. But due to the scheduling, they're still in the Southeastern Division of the Eastern Conference, which obviously doesn't make any sense. So with these new schedules, it makes havoc for scheduling and all, having teams go across time zones just for divisional games, that is. There's been talk of realigning the divisions, and there are lots of different ones floating out there, with some dividing up north and south. We're having a sunshine so-called belt, midwestern belt, and Eastern Division, and Canadian, which has them across time zones, which doesn't make sense.
I'm looking at some graphics here of them. My favorite is the Sun Belt one, where you have Florida and San Jose in the same conference, which makes no sense whatsoever. But there was one plan I saw that did make a lot of sense, and that was your plan, Derek, of realignment. Why don't you tell them where the Penguins would be if you had control of realignment?
I wish I had that much power. But basically it stemmed out of the fact that the one divisional, or realignment I should say, proposal that was getting the most traction was having pretty much Pittsburgh exiled from their old Patrick Division and Atlantic Divisional foes, where they're placed in pretty much with the Great Lakes teams, so to speak, the ones in that kind of region, Montreal, Toronto, etc. So I thought you can't be giving up that divisional rivalry against the Flyers, so I just kind of jotted down some things where it basically kept almost everything intact as far as the Penguins are concerned, just went back to the old Patrick Divisional alignment, so to speak, with who's in there, with adding Washington to the Atlantic Division, and also adding in the Columbus Blue Jackets, who would come across from the Western Conference, since Winnipeg would naturally move to the west from the east, being of course the former Atlanta team. And Columbus, that makes sense to me, as they're just not
geographically,
yeah, they're just right out in Ohio, so it's not that far of a trip.
But you would have 4 divisions, and that would be the...
Yeah, because the old 6-divisional format, which they're using now, I think you can get some watered down, at least in the East, you can get some watered down divisional champions, or I cite Washington in the Southeastern Conference, or Division, as kind of just coasting through the divisional foes, so to speak, racking up these easy points, and then getting into the playoffs when teams of maybe better caliber, Penguins, Devils, whoever it might be lower seeded. And of course in seeding it comes down to home ice advantage. Now of course when you switch to the 4 divisions, you play each other like it used to be. You have to get out of your division before you can play in the conference finals, which makes for a lot of bad blood, not only in the regular season but mostly in the playoffs.
Well, we're just about running out of time, so I'm going to ask you real quick, MVP so far up to this point for the Pittsburgh Penguins.
I would have to say Marc-Andre Fleury, because he's performed very well. He's second in the league in wins right now with 8, behind only Dallas's Kerry Lettinen, who has 10. So we get a face-off of 2 elite goaltenders, at least currently, on Friday. So plus he's up there as 1.95 goals against average and a .931 save percentage. He's just continuing his superb play, not only from last year in the regular season, but also in the playoffs when they pretty much had to rely on him, and he's been up to the task thus far.
Yep, and I would agree completely. And that'll do it on our first edition of Penguin Shootout. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks.